We are going to talk about chapter 21. Again, this is still part of the lymphatic system, but it's really the functional part of it. It's the immune system. So we're going to talk about the immune system sort of from two aspects. One is innate defenses. Innate defenses are the defenses that you are born with. Oops. You are born with these. They are also not specific, meaning they are not targeting a particular foreign antigen. Instead, they are targeting any foreign antigen that gets in your body, anything that doesn't belong. So when I say they're not specific, that's what I mean. It's just anything that does not belong in your body, your innate defenses will try to keep out. So this is going to include things like your surface barriers, like your skin. Your skin is a boundary. It keeps the outside out and the inside in. It's also going to include various cells and chemicals that you have. So another example might be a type of chemical called a pyrogen. What do you think of when you hear that? Pyro. A pyromaniac likes fire, right? Pyrotechnics, fire. So pyrogens are the chemicals that you release in your body that actually cause you to have a fever. Now, when your body temperature runs hot like that, you're not targeting a very particular foreign organism. It's not like you're targeting streptococcal bacteria. Your body is running a fever to try to get rid of anything that doesn't belong. So again, it's not specific. So we're going to walk through some of these innate defenses today. Then we'll touch on what are called adaptive defenses. And these are ones that you build over time. And these are the ones that are specific. These are the ones, when you think of your immune system, this is what you're thinking of. When you get vaccines, this is what you are ramping up, your adaptive defenses, okay? So we'll spend a lot of time talking about our adaptive defenses. We'll talk about terms like antigens. We'll talk about the different cells, like our T cells and B cells. And we'll talk about the different responses when a foreign antigen gets in your body. Now, before we talk about some of these non-specific or innate defenses, I do want to define that term immunity. Term immunity just means your ability to withstand disease or resistance to disease. And again, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, your immune system has two systems, really. It has this innate defense system, which is not specific. And then it has this adaptive defense system, which is specific. Now, the innate defenses is what we're going to be talking about in this lecture. We kind of divide your innate defenses up into sort of two lines of defense, right? The first line, the front line, this is basically going to be your body's membranes. So it's going to be your body's covering. That's the first line of defense that you have to keep the outside out and the inside in. So this is going to include things like your skin and your mucous membranes. The second line of defense would be if something makes it through your skin and mucous membranes, what fights it off next? What's going to try to get rid of that foreign thing next? That's your second line of defense. So these are, again, non-specific, but they include a whole host of things. Anything from cells that are in your body, like phagocytic cells, even proteins and other chemicals that your body can release to fight off something that has made it through that first line of defense. Now, in reality, this second line of defense, if something is able to make it through your first line of defense, if it can make it through your skin, your second line of defense immediately will try to fight it off. But if your second line of defense is activated, it will tell the third line of defense, which is your adaptive immune system. In reality, the second and third line of defense, these are alerted at the same time that something has made it through your skin, okay? But it takes your third line of defense longer to get there, longer to ramp up, and that's why it's the third line of defense. It's the last to come to the party, okay? And your third line of defense is specific. It is part of that adaptive defense system. It's going to include lymphocytes, T cells, and B cells. And this one, remember, we call it specific because it is attacking very particular foreign antigens. But again, like I mentioned, it's the third line of defense because it just takes a little longer for it to become activated. So it's the last one to really help fight the infection. But it's usually the most effective. So again, remember we have these two systems. We have our innate defenses. Again, these are not specific. They're going after anything that doesn't belong. Our first line of defense is your surface barriers, your skin and mucous membranes. Second line of defense, again, is still an innate defense. This is going to include different kinds of cells, chemicals, proteins. And then our third line of defense are our adaptive defenses. These are specific. These are going to include our lymphocytes, our T cells, and our B cells. Okay, so we have three lines of defenses. And today we're really going to focus on the first and second line of defense, our innate defenses. Now, your immune system is much more of a functional system rather than an organ system. So remember, we kind of take chapters 20 and 21 and they're kind of together, because when we talk about our lymphatic system, I kind of have split it up, and we talked about it in chapter 20 about how it picks up leak fluid. But in chapter 21, we're talking about the lymphatic system in terms of immunity. So this is much more of a functional system rather than the organ system that we're talking about. Now, in reality, remember, we have these three lines of defenses, okay? Innate and adaptive defenses. These are really intertwined. And again, the reason, if I go back here, the reason is because if something makes it through your first line of defense, if it makes it through your skin, your second and third line of defense are going to be alerted at the same time. Just takes the third line of defense a little bit longer to get there, right? And so this is why we say that they're really intertwined with each other. A lot of times they're releasing some of the same molecules. And even that second line of defense, it's actually alerting your third line of defense. It's letting your B cells and T cells know that something doesn't belong. So we're going to walk through that first line of defense. So basically our skin and our barriers. And the job of your skin and your mucous membranes is to keep the outside out and the inside in. So this is going to include your skin, your mucous membranes, and all of their secretions. Those secretions that are coming from your skin are really helpful at keeping foreign organisms at bay. So we talked about a lot of this back in Anatomy 1 when we talked about the skin. Your skin is such a great physical barrier because it's continuous. You don't have any breaks in your skin. And in fact, if you get a break in your skin, you cut your skin, it heals fast. Especially a small break, like a little paper cut, it's healed within 24 hours. If it's a bigger cut, your body's gonna put a scab on it, right? My child's knees are just covered in scabs right now. That scab is your body's Band-Aid. You basically have a Band-Aid that your body puts on to keep the outside out and the inside in. So your skin is amazing at maintaining this continuous physical barrier. Now remember, in your skin, you have keratin. Keratin is that hard protective protein. It's a waterproofing protein. You have it in your skin. It's harder in your hair and even harder and stronger in your nails, okay? But keratin is this great protein that resists weak acids and bases, so it can resist chemical fluctuations. It also can resist a lot of bacterial enzymes and toxins. Same thing with your mucous membranes. The mucosa are providing very similar physical barriers with secretions that are also very protective. So I want to walk you through some of the chemicals that are being secreted on your skin or your mucous membranes that are really protective. So the first one is an acid. Your skin actually releases a secretion called the acid mantle. We talked about this in Anatomy 1. The acid mantle is exactly what it sounds like it is. Remember, if you think of your pH scale, it runs from 0 to 14, right? 7 in the middle is neutral. So an acid is on the low end of the scale, and a base is on the higher end of that scale, above 7. So the acid mantle has a pH that's pretty low. It's around 2 or 3. So there's this acidic secretion that's being released on the surface of your skin. And in doing that, it's actually limiting bacterial growth on the surface of your skin. Now, you've probably heard that your skin has bacteria living on it, right? There are bacteria that live on your skin. But the fact that you release an acid actually inhibits the numbers of bacteria that would otherwise live on the surface of your skin. This is also why sometimes soaps, depending on the soap that you use, if it's not a pH balanced soap, it can actually destroy your acid mantle. And then that can really hinder your first line of defense. If your skin gets dried out and cracked, right? Or if you change the pH of your skin, that's going to affect that acid mantle. Another thing that we see, another secretion, are enzymes. So these are enzymes like lysozyme. Remember, it starts with this prefix lyse. Oops. See if I can erase that. Okay. So it starts with this prefix lyse, which means to break open. So lysozyme is an enzyme that we find in our saliva. We find it in our mucus. So the mucus in your nose and your respiratory tract. You find it in your tears. This is an enzyme that actually will lyse open lots of different microorganisms that don't belong. Think about where we're finding it. Pretty much in every opening and orifice in our body, we're finding this enzyme. In your mouth, in your nose, in your eyes, right? So it's going to be there to help break down any bacteria or anything that gets in that doesn't belong. You also have enzymes that are in your stomach that will help to break down foreign organisms. Another secretion is something called mucin. The term mucin from Anatomy 1, remember, it just means mucus. And mucus is sticky. And its job is that it lines the respiratory tract and it truly traps foreign organisms from getting down into your alveoli of the lungs. So it's this sticky substance that is trapping particles in the air so that you don't breathe them all the way down deep into your lungs. You have defensins, human defensin. These are some antimicrobial proteins. We call them broad spectrum. What does that mean? Like a broad spectrum sunscreen, broad spectrum antibiotic. It's for everything. These are broad spectrum antimicrobial proteins. Remember, we are talking about our first line of defense. It's innate defenses. They are non-specific. So broad spectrum should make a lot of sense here. This is going to target anything. And then lastly, we have lipids, fats that you find in coming from your oil gland secretion. And even things like dermacidin that's in your sweat. These are all toxic to certain bacteria, and they can kill off or make it inhospitable for bacteria to live on your skin. Now, the respiratory system does have some modifications to it. Things like the hairs that are in your nose, these are there for a reason. I think I mentioned to you, those YouTube videos of people that are waxing their nose hairs, like they put the wax up there and then yank it out. Don't do that. You need your nose hairs. Nose hairs are actually coated in mucus. And so you basically have this amazing surface area of mucus in your nose because of those nose hairs, and they're helping to trap particles from getting down into your lungs. You also have cilia that line the upper respiratory tract. I think of these cilia as like the mucus escalators. So you have mucus all in your respiratory tract, and the job of these cilia is they are constantly pushing this mucus up to the back of your throat. And every time you swallow a little bit of spit and a little bit of dirty mucus. It goes through your digestive tract and out the other end. This is how you rid your body of that dirty mucus, of the particles that you breathe in. You basically pump it up to the back of your throat, swallow it, and it comes out the other end. You don't know you're doing this unless you have an overproduction of mucus. Then you feel it, right? You can feel it in the back of your throat. You kind of feel all that extra mucus, but otherwise you don't even know it's there. You don't even know it's functioning. Okay. Now the surface barriers, right? This first line of defense is not foolproof. We can cut the skin. We can get nicks and damages in those mucous membranes. And so this is why we also have to have a second line of defense. If something makes it through that first line of defense, we have to have something to fight off those foreign organisms.